All right, let's talk about China's social credit system. You've probably seen the memes, right? The crazy headlines, all the comparisons to that show, Black Mirror. It's almost always painted as this futuristic, dystopian nightmare. But is that story, the one about a single, all-powerful score that controls every part of your life, is that really the whole truth? Well, today, we're going to try and separate the fact from the fiction.
Yeah, this is pretty much the image that's burned into our brains, isn't it? This idea of a world with total surveillance, where one tiny mistake, something as simple as jaywalking, can instantly tank this master score that, dictates your entire life. It's a pretty scary thought. So, the story we're all told is that this one single number determines absolutely everything. Got a low score? Well, forget about buying a train ticket. Oh, and your kids? They might not get into a good school. You could even be blocked from playing video games. When you lay it all out like that, it sounds absolutely terrifying.
But is that what's really happening on the ground in China? Is that popular story the whole truth? Or is the reality something else entirely? Okay, so let's dive into it, because once you start digging, you realize the picture is a lot more confusing than you might think. Just look at what people are saying online. You've got folks on one side screaming, it's literally propaganda. And then right next to them, someone else is saying, well, it does exist, it's just not as crazy as the West makes it out to be. So who's right? Which one is it? And then you hear directly from people who actually live in China. Take this Reddit user, for example. They're saying, look, from my perspective, this whole system is really just about consumption or loans. They've never even heard of it affecting someone's job or education. So they're describing something that sounds a lot more like a typical financial credit score, not some all-encompassing social one. So if you're feeling like this user right now, totally confused, getting mixed answers, not knowing what to believe, you are definitely not alone. It's a mess of conflicting information. So you know what? Let's really break this down. Let's get to the bottom of it. All right, to really understand what's going on today, we have to rewind. We have to go back to where this all began. And here's a spoiler. It had nothing to do with controlling who jaywalks. So this whole idea actually started way back in the early 80s. China's economy was opening up, and they needed a modern financial credit system, like we have in the West. Pretty standard stuff. But the real turning point, the real catalyst, was in 2008. There was this absolutely devastating scandal with melamine in baby formula. We're talking toxic chemicals that sickened hundreds of thousands of infants. It created this huge nationwide crisis of trustworthiness. That event is what really pushed the government in 2014 to release this big plan for a social credit system. And it was right around then, in 2015, that Western media started picking up the story and, well, kind of mashing all these different ideas together into this single, scary, social credit score narrative. Okay, so if it's not one giant, all-powerful score, then what is it? Let's take a look at how it actually works. All right. This right here is probably the single most important thing to understand. The social credit system isn't one system. It's more like an umbrella term for a whole bunch of different things. You've got national blacklists, you've got these local pilot programs, and you have scoring systems run by private companies. Let me say it again because it's important. There is no single universal score for every single citizen in China. So let's break down those three main pieces. First, you have the official blacklists. These are run by the government, and they're for people or companies who've broken the law, like, for example, not paying a court-ordered debt. Then, second, you have the local pilot programs. These are city-level experiments, and the key word here is local. They are not nationwide. A place like Rongcheng might test out a point system, but that's just in Rongcheng. And finally, number three, you have corporate scores. Think of things like Alibaba's Sesame Credit. These are run by private companies and are much more like a rewards or loyalty program than anything else. So, here's the key takeaway. Remember all those really severe consequences we talked about? Getting banned from travel, that kind of stuff? Well, almost all of that is tied directly to those official government blacklists. We're talking about serious legal or financial offenses here, not your everyday behavior like jaywalking. And make no mistake, these punishments are very, very real. If you land on one of these blacklists, say for refusing to pay a big fine, you can literally be banned from buying plane tickets or tickets for high-speed trains. It can even affect your family, like preventing your kids from getting into certain schools. It can tank your job prospects. And then there's the public shaming, where your name, your photo, all your details might get plastered on websites or even billboards for everyone to see. And the scale of this is, well, it's massive.
Back in 2019, reports showed that 23 million people had already been put on a blacklist that stopped them from traveling by plane or train. So, just to be clear, this is not some small scale experiment. This is a system that is having a huge real world impact on millions of people. Okay, so we've kind of busted the big myth of the single all knowing score, but what does this more complex, fragmented reality actually mean? Let's look at the bigger picture. So let's just recap for a second. That simple, scary story of a single score, it's a myth. But, and this is a big but, that doesn't mean there's nothing to talk about here. The reality is this really complex web of different tools, and that, arguably, raises some even more important questions. I love this metaphor from a data analyst because it explains the situation perfectly. Think of it like baking a cake. The government has all the official data. Those are the ingredients. But to actually mix it all together and bake the cake, to build the apps and the infrastructure, for that, they rely on the huge tech capacity of private companies like Alibaba and Tencent. So what you really have is this fusion of state power and corporate technology. It's a system that relies on a massive network of state surveillance, huge amounts of data collection from those big tech companies, and of course those powerful blacklists. And all of it works together to enforce compliance. And this really brings us back to the core of it. This system was never really about punishing you for jaywalking. It's about something much bigger, creating a massive, data-driven machine to enforce legal and financial rules on an enormous scale. So, okay, this simple dystopian myth isn't true. But the reality, this web of widespread surveillance, big data, and powerful blacklists, that is very real. And that, of course, raises some huge questions about privacy, about freedom, and not just for people in China, but for the future of technology everywhere. And that really leaves us with one final, crucial question. We all started out being afraid of this one, simple, all-knowing score. But maybe the reality, this fragmented, complex system of blacklists and mass surveillance that's way harder to see and understand, is that actually more worrying, or is it less? It's definitely something to think about.